Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai Brihad Mridanga Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Lord Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Good morning. Got it here. Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So, studying Srimad Bhagavatam 2753. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, Canto 2, chapter 7, verse 53. This is the last verse in the chapter. We'll start by chanting the verse. Just here. Mayam varnyato musya ishvaryasyanumodata Shrinvata Shraddhaya Nityam Mayatmanam Huyati Mayam Varnyato Musya Ishvarasyanumodata Shrinvata Shraddhaya Nityam Mayatmana Muyhati Mayam Varnayato Musha Ishvarasyanu Modata Shrinvata Shraddhaya Nityam Mayatmana Muyati. Hare Krishna, please chant, devotees. Anyone would like to chant?
Mayam varnayatamsya ishwarasyanumodataha shunvataha shraddhaya nityam mayayatmanam huyati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maya.
Mayam Varnayato Mushya Isharyanumodataha Shrinvataha Shraddhaya Nityam Mayayatmana Mohati.
Mayam Varnayato Mukhya Ishwarasyanumodata Shinvata Shraddhaya Nityam Mayayatmana Muhyati.
Hare Krishna. Mayayam bharnayato musha Isharaya unumodataha Srunbhataha Saddhaya Nitam Mayayatma Namujhati. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Synonyms. Mayam, affairs of the external energy. Varnyata, well describing. Amusha, of the Lord. Ishvarasya, of the personality of Godhead. Anu mo data, thus appreciating. Shrin avata, thus hearing. Shraddhaya, with devotion. Nityam, regularly. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Atma, the living entity. Na, never. Bhuyati, becomes illusions. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder, Acharya of ISKCON. The Lord's activities in association with His different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Purport. The science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Fanatics, or fools, may consider the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy to be useless for them, and they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. On the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches, can you pull up a little bit? There you go. From the clutches of the Lord's external energy, should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the Lord's internal energy, falsely attracted by such activities as His Ras Lila. The cheap reciters of the Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the activities of the Lord's internal potency, and the pseudo-devotees absorbed in material sense enjoyment falsely jump to the stage of liberated souls and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of external energy. Some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about His activities with the gopis, or about His pastimes like lifting Govardhan Hill. And they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusha avatars and their pastimes of the creation, maintenance, or annihilation of the material worlds. But a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the pastimes of the Lord, either in Ras Lila or in creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. Rather, the descriptions of such activities of the Lord as the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Ras Lila are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy, and such acts are as good as the hearing of Ras Lila in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of liberated souls. Lord Sri Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Ras Leela with ordinary men. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. This will be further explained in the last chapter of this canto. In the 3rd canto, it will be more explicit. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. We have several times been requested by some so-called devotees to take up the 10th canto immediately. But we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present Srimad Bhagavatam as the science of God, head, and not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. This is forbidden by such authorities as Sri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge. After being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyments. Om Jnana Timidrandhasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulin Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanyam Hanho Bishnam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dati Sva Pandantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vikasha Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. All right. Exciting. Let's read the verse one more time here. The Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly and with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Well, we're all in the right place according to this verse this morning, as we are hopefully hearing the activities, describing and appreciating in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord as delivered and given to us by his divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And it's on us to do it with devotion and respect. So we get the opportunity to have connection to this teaching through our good fortune by some way or another, the teachings of transcendental knowledge. Somehow we have come in contact with that, and though then we have to do our part. And what is our part? Our part is to muster up whatever devotion we have or can find within our hearts in relation to serving and understanding Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, maybe we don't have devotion because of our contaminated state. And as Prabhupada describes here, we're not to imitate those who have it, although we can follow in their footsteps. But one thing we can do is approach this knowledge with respect. And what does it mean to approach this knowledge with respect? Well, this is described very nicely in this purport, and the basis of the whole verse itself, from Lord Brahma down to Narada, through the disciplic succession, through Lord Chaitanya and so many acharyas, and into our current situation in this verse, how we approach this knowledge with respect. And what if we do get by chance happen to end up doing this, what's going to happen to us? We're going to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. As described in this verse, we all know the word. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Most of us, Maya, the illusory energy. What is the illusory energy? Well, another term for Maya, maybe a translation is another way of saying it. A translation for Maya is that which is not. So we are experiencing reality through the lens of our conditioned identity. And we're thinking that it is real and it is the substantial reality. But what we are understanding is that the real, true reality is the spiritual reality. And the spiritual reality is that which we truly are. And by approaching it with devotion and respect, we can get out of the illusory energy that is very difficult to escape, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. This illusory energy of mind is very difficult to overcome. Although with a bit of devotion and connection to Krishna, it is very easy to overcome, like the water in a calf's hoof print. And so we're looking at how we can do that here. So how are we doing that? With first, we have one option, and we are, as the baseline, approaching it with respect. And Srila Prabhupada is giving us the direction on how to approach it with respect. And in the purport here, the first sentence, we could say the first two sentences, are very strong, as Srila Prabhupada had the tendency to be very direct and strong in his messaging, which has garnered criticism by foolish people that have criticized Srila Prabhupada's method of calling out, as he puts it, fools and rascals. And here he says, the science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Just that sentence alone could be a subject of meditation for one's entire life, what to speak of just right now very quickly, but we could look at, what does it mean? The science of learning a subject matter is seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Well, Prabhupada, if you look up fanatic in database, it is used a lot. Prabhupada used that term a lot. In fact, he specifically discussed it in the Bhagavad Gita in the purport of the verse 3, chapter 3. That verse goes like this. The blessed Lord said, or that's from the old version, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Here we have two classes of men. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work. And what Prabhupada describes about this is a very well quoted, very succinct description of what is fanaticism. Well, philosophy and religion connected. Therefore, both yogas, religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism. while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So fanaticism is believing something on a sentiment without having a basis behind that belief, and believing it so deeply that one ignores the facts, ignores reality, and follows a fanatical approach in such a way that they are actually brought deeper and deeper into illusion. But as Prabhupada puts here, the science of learning a subject matter seriously is different than that. And what is different about that, as he is describing here, is that there is actually a scientific approach. And there is a philosophy behind this that should be understood, that should be followed, and a process, a scientific process, that to understanding the supreme truth. Many times we find from our conditioned state, when we consider religion or spirituality, we consider it to be distinct from science. And that because of the requirement or the element of faith in spirituality or religion, science is not to be brought into the equation. Although we understand, and we are directed to understand by Srila Prabhupada, that actually faith is required even in science. Because at some point we have to accept things that we cannot prove, even from a scientific perspective. This is called an axiomatic basis. So an axiom, something that has to be accepted, that cannot be proved. For example, those of us who accept that there are atoms and protons and neutrons inside of atoms that are making up the substance of the material energy, which is a scientific fact, right? We're not going out and proving that with our own sight. We're accepting that on faith. And those who are accepting that in the scientific community also are accepting that on faith, because other people have accepted it as truth as well. And enough people have accepted it as truth, and it's plausible to accept it on faith. And it becomes something where it's almost not faith anymore, it's truth. In the same way, the spiritual science, the spiritual knowledge, as given in the disciplic succession from Lord Brahma to Narada all the way down, as we're studying here, also requires faith. But it's not a fanatic or sentimental faith. It is a faith in the same way that a scientist accepts the findings of his other scientific peers to prove the existence of something. In the same way, we can look to the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Acharyas and the process of spiritual understanding that is given in this Srimad Bhagavatam to be a scientific expression, a scientific explanation, a scientific approach that is as true and factual and scientific as anything that's in the material world. Why is that? Because there are corroborated evidences throughout history, millions of thousands, however many, innumerable spiritually enlightened individuals have come to the same conclusions, have accepted the same scientific approach, have expressed the same categorical experiences that are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, even back to Lord Chaitanya's time and before that, and of course in modern day time, those of us who are taking part in the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya are also labeled as fanatics. And we're labeled as crazy people. Those people who are out on the streets chanting and dancing some mantra, dressed in bed sheets with paint on their faces, completely going against the modern day kind of cultural norms. They're labeling us as fanatics. But of course, we understand that this is due to ignorance. But what Srila Prabhupada is saying here, that actually they are fanatics. Those who are those fanatics and what? Fools. Prabhupada many times calls people fools. And of course, you know, we find in our modern day kind of approach to Krishna consciousness and in our society that we want to be very, very sensitive to others' viewpoints. And we want to try to, you know, not unnecessarily disturb the minds of those people in society that are acting like fools. Although Srila Prabhupada did not necessarily take that approach. He was charging forward, and he very much was eager to expose, as he put it in many lectures, to expose the fools and rascals for their leading people like the blind leading the blind and exploiting the people based on speculation and misunderstanding of the truth. And why fanatics or fools may consider the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy to be useless for them. This is what's making them, us, in this conditioned state, foolish. Because we are what? We are considering the Lord's activities in relation to the external energy useless for us. What are we considering to be important? In the material energy, what is considered to be important is that you go to school, you get a job, you pay your taxes, you become a nice functioning member of society. If you can become a nice functioning member of society, you pay your taxes, you have a nice retirement account, you take care of your family. Okay, very nice. Maybe you can also sprinkle in some materially motivated religion there. Go to church on Sunday, eat meat, drink alcohol. These things are all accepted. They are okay. They're not considering what is the connection, what is the relation with the external energy and Krishna and our relationship with the external energy and what is happening in this life. Why are we growing old? Why are we dying? Why are we having to accept body after body? Why are we ending up in a situation where we are stuck inside of a body that is quite literally decaying around us? We have no choice to get out of it. And then what happens? They may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. Higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. That means everything from Krishna is equally good. When we are in touch with Krishna and the spiritual aspect of our selves, then the external energy is as good as the internal energy. Although when we do not have a connection with that internal potency of Krishna, then we are stuck. And as we're seeing here, and as it is being described by Srila Prabhupada here, that there is a step-by-step approach that we should take. And I want to get into that step-by-step approach as we see here. We'll discuss it. But before I go there, I want to make a mention of this whole idea of fanatics. And so we're being described as fanatics, but also Lord Chaitanya was described as a fanatic as well. So we're in good company. And Lord Chaitanya was described as a fanatic, Adi Leela. It was Prakash Ananda Saraswati. Why do you follow this sentimentalism? He asked him. Chanting and dancing. You're a sannyasi. This is not what sannyasis do. Meditation and study of the Vedanta are the sole duties of a sannyasi. This was what was understood at the time, right? Why do you abandon these to dance with fanatics? And what did Lord Chaitanya say? He said,
My guru said, I'm a fool.
yes. My guru said, I'm a fool. I'm a fool. This is the mentality. Lord Chaitanya had this mentality. So in the conditioned state, see, he's saying this, he recognizes that he is a fool. This is the entryway into spiritual life, where we recognize that the way we've been thinking, the way we've been approaching life, the way that we're trying to exploit this material energy, that we, no matter what our position is, even if we are in the position of a sannyasi who is exalted in our, thinking of spirituality, and then of course, what to speak of us in the Western countries who are meat eaters and all types of abominable things we're doing. But to come to the point of recognition that we have been foolish, we are foolish. We go from pride, full of pride, to humility in relation to where we've come from. And he said, and then from there, what was the description of what needed to be done? He said, you are a fool. You're not qualified to study the Vedanta. Therefore, you must chant the holy name of Krishna. This is the essence of all mantras or Vedic hymns. So in one sense, we're very fortunate. We're in a position where we also can simply chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Although it's a kind of treacherous ocean that we're in, but we're in this boat of Srila Prabhupada's boat. In Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but there's one good quality of this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from the material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. So we know this. We're very fortunate to have the opportunity to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. We will be called fanatics, although we hear from this verse and we recognize that actually they are fanatics. Why are they fanatics? We aren't crazy, they're crazy. That's how it goes. That is the truth. And why is that the truth? Because we have factual basis. We have scientific basis in the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a morning walk conversation. Pushta Krishna asked Srila Prabhupada. But if we take that away, if we take that we are the only way, because Prabhupada's saying we are the only way, he's literally saying, Prabhupada, anyone. Why? Any Maharaj, any man who will speak something which is not in the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, he is cheating. That's what Prabhupada said. Pushta Krishna asked him. But if we take that we are the only way, then people will call us fanatics. Prabhupada. They may say they are themselves fanatics. Who cares for them? If a madman says you are a madman, I have to accept? No. He must be a sane man. Then there is some meaning. He is calling me madman, but he is if I am a blind and if another man, he is blind, he says you are blind, what is the use? And then they say, okay, well, what's the proof? Prabhupada, our proof is that we are following the sane man's instruction, or sane being, the supreme being. There cannot be any mistake. Therefore, we are sane. Then the Pushta Krishna says, but they also say they are following. No, and Prabhupada, no. Therefore, why are they changing? We don't change. Millions of years. What Krishna said, we are following the same, but they change every year. So this is the basis, right? Because the objection comes like, well, you say you've got it all figured out. Everybody says they have it figured out. Everyone says they have the highest knowledge. But we are following what hasn't been changed from the one sane being, and that is what's making us sane. Not because we are creating something or speculating on something or coming up with a new formula. And there is a very specific approach and specific formula for how we should follow, as is described here in this verse and purport. And of course, there is the tendency, now, not so much, I mean, within ISKCON, I would say, but I think this is, this has happened throughout history in India, where people, we could call them, well, Prabhupada calls them pseudo devotees, are looking to jump over the first 9 cantos and get right to the 10th canto so that they can get into this Ras Leela. But really, what is that? That's because there's a tendency for us as conditioned souls to want to beat the system. We don't want to do the hard work. We want to get right to the thing that gives us the benefit. Like, why are the biggest industries in the world those that give people immediate benefit and take no effort at all? And they give you a little sensation or a little charge or a little thrill. In fact, all of social media is completely, exploiting these huge corporations are exploiting the people by giving them these little surges of, excitement, taking from them, taking their life energy and profiting off of them to the other companies for their advertising dollars. So that then what are they giving them in exchange? They're stealing their life, and they're giving them a little surge of dopamine hit in their brain. Because human beings can be easily exploited in this way. Because we have a tendency to want to do the easy thing and get the benefit without having to do the work. Like, liposuction, so many examples you can give. But what we see here is that just like that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we should be very careful that we don't overstep our boundaries or go beyond our qualification in relation to learning and understanding the spiritual science. Although, as Prabhupada says, a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the pastimes of the Lord in either the Rasa Lila or in creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world. Rather, the description of such activities of the Lord as the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of external energy. So there's a process of us actually having to come out of this external energy so that we can taste the sweetness of the Rasa Lila as it is, as it actually is. In a contaminated conditioned state, what we're getting is like, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described it, we're like licking the outside of the honey bottle. And so we take that licking of the outside of the honey bottle to be the actual, taste of honey in the conditioned state. But what happens is we end up falling down, as it says here, that we're falsely jumping to the stage of a liberated soul and thus falling down deeply into the clutches of external energy. It's interesting to consider that, like, there's, these, Prabhupada discusses it. I've never actually experienced it. I mean, but there's this whole group of cheap reciters, right, of the Bhagavatam, where they are literally using the Bhagavatam as a way to make money and sell the message of Krishna for their own sense gratification and exploit the mentalities of people to want to hear about these things for their own benefit. But as is described, the pseudo devotees absorbed in material sense enjoyment, this is something that I would really think about and meditate on for my own self, to be aware of it, where I don't fall into this category of pseudo devotee. Because for sure I'm attracted to material sense enjoyment. And I know that I have the ability and tendency to be able to fall victim to something that may on the surface appear to look like Krishna consciousness or appear to look like the Lord's internal potency, but actually is the external energy. And if devotees throughout, and if pseudo devotees and those people who have come to Krishna consciousness in some way, shape, or form throughout history, even in India, or can fall into the tendency to be, sahajiyas and take things cheaply, then of course I also have that tendency. And this here is helping us to understand how to not end up in that position. It's described in this particular verse about the Ras Lila, but it can also be understood of other aspects of Krishna consciousness as well, I would assert, where Prabhupada gave us a very simple and direct process, and we can follow that simple and direct process and keep things simple in relation to the directions of Srila Prabhupada, and have a much better chance of reaching the goal in this life. Because ultimately, we can easily fall victim to the clutches of the external energy. And what is that? Sense gratification, material enjoyment. And as Prabhupada puts here, a conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of liberated souls. And even Lord Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Ras Lila with ordinary men. So I think that most of us here, we understand that we're not to be putting an overemphasis on the Rasa Lila. And what is the Rasa Lila? It's Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. It's Krishna's, you could kind of sense it as, like, from a conditioned state, you could think of it like Krishna with women dancing and, having conjugal relationships. And it's very like, kind of in a totally contaminated, perverted sense. It's like it's kind of like excitable or tantalizing in some kind of sense gratificatory way. But to overcome that, we have to be sure that we are following, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for the hearing of the 10th canto. So we really, as described, our direction is to read the full Srimad Bhagavatam, starting from the beginning and leading all the way up to, of course, all the way through to the end, but read it from the beginning and get that description. And that does take some austerity and it takes effort, although very sweet and wonderful opportunity to take advantage of that through the Srimad Bhagavatam that was given to us, translated, given by Srila Prabhupada throughout the last 10 years of his life. And it's broken down. The whole science of Krishna consciousness is broken down in that, and it gives us the direction of exactly what we need to know to have the full science of God, the full science of Krishna consciousness. And the beautiful thing also is that we are here in this ISKCON of Philadelphia morning Srimad Bhagavatam class that I have the good fortune and my lack of complete qualification to be able to give any type of thoughts on this. But here we are, we're able to follow Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees. And as it's described in this verse, ultimately what we are trying to get is devotion and respect. And what we are getting in this description in the purport is how we can approach this with respect. We have a choice on whether we approach something with respect. That is one aspect of our free will. We can choose respect or we can choose disrespect. And we are given the direction, because if we don't understand the etiquette or we don't understand how to approach something with respect, then we won't ultimately, we could cause offenses. So we're getting the direction here, which is not to imitate the activities of liberated souls, not to jump to the 10th canto, not to overstep our qualification in the understanding, in the teachings of the transcendental science, to work our way up from the bottom through the Bhagavad Gita into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Read that, approach it with respect, and do that in the association of devotees, right? As this verse is described here. If done regularly, described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord, we get this opportunity here in these classes, and we get the opportunity to approach it with respect by following the directions that are given by Srila Prabhupada in his purports, in his lectures, in his classes, so many places. As long as we're willing to step forward and kind of accept the authority, the scientific authority of this teaching, then we'll be in a position where we can actually break out of this illusory energy of the Lord, which is very difficult to break free from. But as we're seeing here also in the ending of this purport, by reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge. We're gradually being promoted. It's coming down to us. It's like we're being, like the dew of the morning is saturating us slowly. So we're gradually being brought to the higher status of transcendental knowledge. After what? After being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyment. So our tendency for sense enjoyment is there. We can be aware of it. Even in our approach to Krishna consciousness, our tendency for sense enjoyment is there. And it can manifest, and it has manifested in the past in different groups and different approaches to Krishna consciousness. So we can be aware that it has the tendency to happen in ourselves and in the greater community. And this is our opportunity to approach it with respect, approach it scientifically, not jump over our qualifications, and ultimately put ourselves in the position to be freed from the illusory energy so that we can go back home, back to Godhead, make our life successful, make the use of this human form of life, which is to not live like hog, dog, camels that eat stool and work hard day and night for money, but to actually take on this tapodivyam, this divine austerity of reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, taking prasadam, being able to accept the societal pressure that we are called and pushed around as fanatics and looked at as people, crazy people. But we understand that we're not following the blind leaders like the rest of society is. We are following the one sane man, that is Krishna, who has given us this knowledge. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Please, any questions, thoughts, ideas, or anything that anyone might want to comment on in this verse? Of course, any objections or offenses I may have caused, please forgive me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So if there's nothing else, let's keep our scientific approach to Srimad Bhagavatam close to our heart and keep going. Yeah. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa
Pitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shashi Shekhar.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for your nice